movement. And then today sorry.
Wait, where's Joseph?
Chicano. Okay. It's the same seat as last
Just
time.
take
so.
his chair. You can just take
No,
his
no,
chair.
hey, it's not there, it's not there.
Where you just use this.
Oh,
You can sit here still.
Riley.
Dude, what?
It's the same thing. It's just like a regular chair. Okay. Do you want to go get another chair from up there? Okay, so where would you want to go?
Why can't we just swap?
Where would you want to?
You can come sit here if you want. You want to sit with us? Okay, just sit at that desk.
Okay, we're quiet, paying attention.
Okay, so the last time we talked about the Chicano movement, right? I said it wrong, so instead of Chicano, it'll be Chicano. I'm sorry. That was my bad. So it's going to be the Chicano movement. And remember, that was with what group of people? Do you remember what group of people that was? We're talking about they're fighting for their rights.
Mexican
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 Americans.
Americans. Yeah, specifically Mexican Americans, because that's an important point, because if it was just Mexicans, it wouldn't be the same, because this is happening in America. So it'd be Mexican Americans. So that group of people. And then today we're going to talk about the women's rights movement. So this is also something very personal to us, because as we can see, we have girls and boys in this room. And so if this movement didn't happen, we would have a lot less rights as women or girls. You wouldn't have as many rights as we have today. Okay?
Yeah.
So how are women involved in our World War I and World War II efforts? So when we're talking about the efforts, how did they help during the war? Think about their roles.
I have a question.
Yes, with your question.
I don't understand why there can be such segregation between men and women. Like, don't you have to have a man and a woman to reproduce?
Yes, yes you do. And that's an important point, and that's like, that was something that people valued back then too, but it's okay, it's perfectly fine to ask that. We didn't need to so, and back in these times, if we're talking about like, we'll be talking about the 1800s a little bit and the 1920s, that was more of the role of women were to be mothers and to raise a family, and that was kind of your goal as a woman during that time. But things changed drastically as we got more rights, which we're going to talk about, is how we got to that point of having more rights, where people saw women as you can do more, you're more valuable than just being a mom and a wife. Now that is a valuable thing, but women can also do more than that, right?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Just like men can do more than just work. Men are also fathers, men are sons, men are neighbors. So, yeah. Okay, yeah, so women were, we're thinking about how were women impactful in World War I. So they were nurses. Some were even trained to be able to take care of men, were able to take care of women as well. Eventually, do you remember in World War II, how did that change? How did their roles change a little bit more? What did they start getting involved in?
They
In
start
World War
getting
II?
war, votes, equal jobs.
So, not quite. We're almost there, but like, what kind of jobs did they have?
Oh, they were like nurses and wars.
They were nurses. We already said nurses. What?
They made ambulance,
right?
soldiers.
Well, they could have driven ambulance.
They did.
Not quite soldiers, but they did help with like building machinery,
They
right?
also had to fight sicknesses.
Yeah. So I mean, everyone can fight sicknesses too, but specifically, what jobs did they have? They were
To help
building.
people fight off sicknesses.
farmers and they
Like
like
cancer.
build and supplies, so they worked at factories.
Yeah. So maybe they worked in factories. That was very common. sometimes too, if, let's just say, okay. So let's just say that somebody's husband was away at work. What did a woman have to do?
Take their job.
Take care of the kids.
Yeah, take care of the kids, but like let's just say like they had land. We were talking about how Lena was mentioning, one second. Lena was mentioning that they could be farmers, but they have to take care of things too back home as well. So it is important that the roles of, if we go back to more of the 1800s, before our 1900s, before we get to like the 1940s and 50s, in World War II. So those roles of wife and mother were very important, and they still are important today. So I want to make that clear. Those things are important, and we need that. But this was more an issue of people were saying you can't do these things because of your gender, and that's where things get bad, right? So if you're telling someone they can't do something because of the way they are, the way they're made, and they totally can, that's going to really mess things up. Mm-hmm.
Well, kids would work in factories too.
Yes, kids would work in factories too.
And then,
That was more the industrial
Wait, so the
revolution.
moms aren't taking care of them anymore?
Well, some are. It wasn't every single woman, but some women, like if you were single, if you weren't married, you could go work for a factory. You could work for an airplane plant. You could work as a nurse, and you could do those things married as well. But you know, you get a babysitter. There's other things around it. Just like your parents, if your mom works, some of your moms are working, and you have other people take care of you, right? Like, yeah. So you
She
probably have.
works night shift, so we have to stay at our aunt and uncle's.
Yeah, so maybe grandma or aunt and uncle will help you. Aunt and uncle, I'm sorry. So, not grandma. But aunt and uncle will take
My
care of
grandma's
you.
mean.
So, okay, you need to be listening. We are trying to have a talk up here. So, if you're not contributing, you need to be quiet and listen.
eventually they work in like the hospitals.
Yeah, so even like as we get towards the point of desegregation, that's also an important point, right? Different colors of people of different colors are starting to work together too at a certain point, okay? But we're gonna mainly just focus on the women's movement, okay? So let's watch this video from the History Channel. This will tell you a brief history of how
Spectrum is proud to be a part of Green.
Okay. So watch it here. It's gonna take you through what happened to get to the point of where women could vote. So that's our main thing. We're gonna be narrowing it down. We're gonna narrow in on how do we get to the point where women could vote. Okay?
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal. No, that's not the Declaration of Independence. It's actually from the Declaration of Sentiments, a document signed at the first ever Women's Rights Convention in 1848. Back then, women in the U.S. weren't allowed to do a lot of things men were, like vote, and it would take them another 70 years to be granted that fundamental right. Why? Well, many thought encouraging women's involvement in politics would undermine society. The prospect of women voting was threatening to the white men who held power. In 1848, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott decided to organize factions across the country that were campaigning for suffrage, or the right to vote. The convention at Seneca Falls, New York, addressed women's rights and inspired other conventions and meetings. Stanton considered it the beginning of the women's rights movement. After the Civil War, the 15th Amendment was introduced, which would give black men, but not women of any color, the right to vote. Suffragists were split. Stanton and Susan B. Anthony opposed the amendment, objecting to the exclusion of women. They formed the National Woman Suffrage Association, hoping to pass a constitutional amendment that included women. Others, like abolitionists Lucy Stone and Henry Blackwell, supported the 15th Amendment. They founded the American Woman Suffrage Association and lobbied for the women's right to vote on a state level instead of through a national amendment. The 15th Amendment was ratified in 1870. Black men could vote, but women still couldn't. In 1878, a women's suffrage amendment penned by Susan B. Anthony was finally proposed in Congress, but it was defeated on the Senate floor in 1887. In 1890, the separate suffrage movements merged, opting to tackle suffrage by state in the wake of the federal amendments defeat. Within 6 years, Colorado, Utah, and Idaho granted women the right to vote. Wyoming had already done it in 1869. Around the same time, the National Association of Colored Women was formed, bringing together more than 100 black women's clubs. It included leaders Mary Church Terrell, Josephine Silent Yates, and Anna Julia Cooper. By the turn of the 20th century, the women's suffrage movement had gained renewed momentum. Parades, marches, and pickets drew great attention to the cause. Between 1910 and 1918, a number of states and territories expanded voting rights to women. In 1912, 15,000 suffrage supporters took to the streets of New York City. But as women's political power grew, so did the danger they faced. In 1913, on the eve of President Woodrow Wilson's inauguration, hundreds of women were injured in a massive suffrage parade in the nation's capital. In November of 1917, 33 suffragists were arrested outside the White House. The women were clubbed, beaten, and tortured by prison guards at the Occoquan workhouse. One of the movement's leaders, Alice Paul, founder of what became the National Woman's Party, was placed in solitary confinement in order to break her will and undermine her credibility. But press coverage of the women's treatment increased sympathy for their plight. And in 1918, Representative Jeanette Rankin, the first woman in Congress, opened congressional debate on a women's suffrage amendment. The resolution failed. In 1918, President Wilson also came out in favor of suffrage, declaring it was needed as a war measure. Wilson argued that women had been providing vital roles during World War I, and that their votes should be counted in order to make the world safe for democracy. Finally, in 1919, the Federal Women's Suffrage Amendment, the same one written by Susan B. Anthony back in 1878, was passed by the House and the Senate. And on August 26, 1920, the 19th Amendment was officially incorporated into the U.S. Constitution, prohibiting denying the vote to a U.S. citizen based on gender. Although states could still deny voting rights based on other things. It would take another 4 years for Native American women and men to get the right to vote, and more than 30 years before major restrictions were lifted on Asian American voting rights.
They
Okay,
also had to have a men to vote back then.
yeah. So men were doing the voting, right? Because if women aren't, then it would be men that are doing the voting.
Why did they? Yeah. What's so good about voting?
Okay, so think about.
For black women, the story of a
Okay, so let's answer about a really important question. So why would you want to vote? Okay, so think about how voting is today. When your parents are going to vote, if you've ever talked about it, the reason why we vote is so we can elect leaders, right? Is that right? Yeah, so that's what we're doing. We're going to elect leaders, elect different people. So the important thing with that is when you elect certain leaders, you have the choice to do that, correct? So when you're making the decision, like I'm going to vote for this person, that's your choice, and that's how you decide I want to vote for this person. And then when you decide to vote for that person, you're voting for what they believe in too. Usually that's why you vote for a certain person, is because you're like, well, I want their ideas to be telling me what I'm going to be doing with my life. So 18, when you turn 18, you can start voting. Yeah, so when you become a legal adult, then you can start voting. You can go to the voting booth and get a sticker, but you can't, usually you can get a sticker at most places, but you can't actually do the voting. But the important thing, Lysandra, was about choice. So it was okay, well, I'm a person, and they're claiming that women can't vote for leaders. They can't choose what they want to do. So that's the importance of voting, is as you are as you can, as you make the choice to vote for someone, you're hoping that, hey, if they get elected, these certain changes could be made, or maybe they will stand up for this. Okay, so it's an important thing that we as Americans should have, everyone should have. So that's why they were upset. Okay, that was the main reason why they're upset about voting.
They just want to change.
Yeah, they want to change. So some other things that women face is they weren't maybe getting equal pay. So that was another thing. We talked about the Chicano, how we talked about the Chicano movement, how those people, they were fighting for equal pay too for their work. Because like there were many farmers, because many Mexican Americans worked in like the agriculture industry. Not everybody, but a lot of them did. And so with that, they were looking for equal pay for the work that they were doing. Okay? And equal, remember, they were like segregated in schools. We read that story about Sylvia Munoz. They were all segregated in schools. Okay, based on like the color of their skin. So that's another thing. Yes.
Women got treated different from men.
Yeah, so women got treated differently. What did you see in the video that showed that they were treated differently than men?
In the video, it said like they would get hidden.
So like they were beaten, you mean? Yeah. So they got hurt because they're like, well, there are many people that didn't agree with them, and they were saying, well, like women, you can't vote. So like I'm angry at you, and because you're deciding to protest, you know, it wasn't. Even if it was peaceful protesting, some people acted aggressively. Okay, so that was another huge problem. Is that like things could get really dangerous too. So there's some other things that happened with the suffrage, We say suffrage. That also means when you saw that word suffrage in the video, that means like the protesting. So we're fighting for women's rights. If we say like suffrage, we're gonna be protesting for change.
Well, like, how do women like not get to do anything, but women are the only reason that like all the other people are there?
Well, because
Exactly.
that's
Your mama was the reason that you're here. She's a what? A woman.
so well that goes back to like years and years ago in history, like centuries ago, when we have like setting how society was set up. So way back in like when we go back into the times of like maybe how
Adam and Eve.
yeah, we can go back to the Bible, which the Bible has like Adam and Eve. Now those are like our two people, right? Our man and women. So you can go back to the Bible times, which would be like, guys, I need you up here.
1008.
So we have like, when you think about like Greek and Roman culture, that's the same time frame as the Bible. So if we go back to like Greek and Roman culture too, men were traditionally like the heads of the homes. They were also making like political decisions, and a lot of how things were set up in like Greek and Roman culture influenced how things were set up in European culture, which then influenced how American culture was set up. Because remember, we came from where? Where do we come from?
Britain.
So a lot of us immigrated, a lot of Americans immigrated from Britain, or we came from Italy or Germany or Russia. Remember, in immigration, we had all these people coming over, right?
Why did they come over though? That's my question.
Well, for some with persecution, could be a lot of reasons. If they just want a different life and they weren't able to have the opportunity in their country, they could come over to America where things were freer. And we have things like the Declaration of Independence and all these things which tell us our rights as individuals, right? Okay, so the main reason why, to answer that in short, is because of the way things were set up in other countries. It carries over. So, and that's what people do.
Oopsie doopsie.
Okay.
Oh, that's.
Okay, no.
Okay. So do we have any more questions about the like women's suffrage movement, women's rights? was mainly set up by two people. So we have Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and we have Lucretia Mott. So those were two women who were really influential. They formed the Women's Suffrage Association, or the National American Women's Suffrage Association. Remember, Rainbow was saying that looked like NASA, but it's NASA, like N-A-W.
NASA.
Here, I'll write it down.
Jinx.
Well, let's look here.
NASA.
National Aeronautics and Space Administration.
No, it is recording.
NASA, the National American Women's Suffrage Association. So that was the main thing that pulled all the women together in America. A lot of them were under this association, and then they would go protest together at different points. So you can see here in the pictures, they have these signs that say equality for women, votes for women, give us the vote now. So these were things that they wrote in there because that's what they were fighting for. So they would protest and shout these things, so hoping that people would want to make the same changes that they wanted to make. Equal jobs and education opportunities. That's what this one says over here. If you look up here, equal jobs, education opportunities. Okay? So those are some things that they would write down on their protest signs. Okay? So we're going to read a book today. We're going to do kind of what we did last time. We talked about the Chicano movement. We're going to read this book. It's called The Voice That Won the Vote. Okay? And then at the end, you're going to be writing down, in your journal notebooks, you're going to be writing down something that surprised you, and then something that you learned after reading this. Okay? So be thinking about those things we're reading, okay? Alright, so The Voice That Won the Vote. So, if you guys want, would it be better if we move closer to the front so we can see? Okay, so grab your notebook and this round is
That table can stay right there though.
okay. So these two tables here can come find a spot. Well, you can balance it on your lap.
No, that's not.
Okay, well, you can find a way. Okay, so you guys want to come up to the front? Or back to and come up to the front?
Riley, you can come sit over here.
No.
Okay, so make sure there's like room here, so.
Right there.
I know, it's my hole. Why is my hole?
Gideon, did Miss Wine?
Yeah, or sit like right here. Just sit somewhere around the rug if you don't want to sit right on the side.
Oh, you have to bring your back.
Yes, bring your notebook on.
Micah, come move up.
I'm asking everyone else to, so you need to do. You're not exempt from what's doing what the class is doing. Okay. Alright, so look up here. Okay, we're gonna start. Okay. A vote is a voice. This is what I believe in. This is what I stand for. This is what matters to me. This is who I am. This is who I choose to lead my town, my state, my country. So think about that statement. Joseph. Think about that statement. Why is that so powerful? We're going to talk about a vote is a voice. Can you imagine if you didn't have a voice at all? If you couldn't talk. I know, that's groundbreaking for some of you. You don't have a voice to talk with. But yeah, but imagine not being able to have rights. When we're talking about a voice, it's not just using our voice to speak, but it means being able to have rights as a person. So that's what we're talking about in this context, okay? Okay. You need to sit. You guys need to stop now. Come over here, please. Well, please sit with us. It's just weird, so you need to come sit. He can sit here. I don't want him on his desk right now.
Guys, it's not your place to question.
Okay, just sit down, please. That's all you need to do. Okay, just stay there. Okay, so this is who I choose to lead my town, my state, and my country. Okay. Oh, I'm having a hard time seeing. In 1920, women were still denied that voice. For nearly 75 years, they had organized meetings, marched in parades, carried signs, and made speeches demanding the right to vote. Say yes to suffrage, they shouted. They wore yellow roses. Yellow means yes. Okay, so that was an important point for them. They wore yellow roses, and what did that mean? But yes to what?
Voting.
Yeah, so it's yes to for the right to vote. Okay, let's look at the next one. But they were silenced. Other voices drowned them out. Troublemakers. Female voters will surely cause chaos. Uncivilized. Women with voice in politics? Nonsense. The only vote a woman needs is the vote to choose her husband. So,
Wait, but even a woman said women.
Yeah. and that's a good point, is that even some women thought that women shouldn't be voting in politics. Maybe based,
Why does she have two different shoes?
I don't know, it's just the way they draw it. They drew it.
That one in the blue skirt doesn't.
Yeah.
It's the only one. But
Okay, so not all women actually believe that all women should vote. That's an important point. So because just like everyone else, you can have different opinions, right, than the majority of others. So not everyone thought that it was right for women to be voting. This guy, when he's saying the only vote a woman needs is the vote to choose her husband, it is really crazy, but that's like actually what some people thought. Or they thought that women weren't smart enough to vote. These were just awful things that people thought.
Why is there a woman saying women with a voice in politics?
Because that's what she believed. I mean, you can still be a woman and believe that, but it might be because someone told her she should believe that. I mean, think about it. If someone told you your whole life that it was wrong for you to do something, and then someone else tells you it's right, you might feel like, hey, I still think it's wrong, even if it's actually right.
So she still doesn't care if she's a woman?
Sorry, say it again.
So she doesn't care if she votes or not?
Well, she's not acting like she cares. She thinks it's nonsense. So I would say she probably doesn't care.
That's nonsense.
So, yeah. Or maybe she's afraid. She could be afraid too of what people are going to say about her. Sometimes we say things even though we know it's not right.
Where's the piece nonsense?
It's back there. Okay. But nestled in a valley on a farm in East Tennessee, one woman was determined to have a voice and a vote. Feb Byrne was known around town as smart and strong-willed. At a time when most women didn't go to college, Feb did. Her name is Feb Byrne. She graduated and became a teacher. She read newspapers and magazines and books, and she loved to learn. Feb Byrne was especially fascinated by laws and the people who made them. Every year on election day, the men who worked on her farm would head to town hall to cast their votes. And every year, Feb Byrne would watch them go. She was sick and tired of staying home, shut out of the process. So one day, she sat on her front porch with some paper and pen and a plan. Dear son, she began. Okay, so what's something we're learning about Feb? What is Feb like? Okay, so we see that she has a son by maybe the letter she's writing.
She may not live with her son.
Okay, yeah, she might not live with her son because she's writing to him. Okay, do you have a thought? Okay, what's your thought? Okay, so she's confident. Okay,
Oh,
that's an important point.
I have something.
Okay,
There's an invisible shoe.
okay,
We already knew.
but that's not really about Feb though, right?
I mean,
She owns it.
It's an observation, but we're talking about Feb. Okay, so Feb, we also saying that Feb is a strong-willed person. person. So strong-willed could mean she's ready to make change. So let's see. Yeah, she's more independent. Yeah, okay. You need to be seated now, please. Okay. Okay. Well, let's sit down. Okay. A few days later, a letter arrived to the desk of a young lawmaker in Tennessee. His name was Harry Byrne. And on that hot August day, he watched the state Capitol Hill fill up with reporters, photographers, and people from all over the country who had come to witness history. America was on the verge of change. So, when we're saying America was on the verge of change, this takes place in this whole story takes place in the 1920s. So we're right on the edge of where women's suffrage is starting to happen in these cities like Washington, D.C.
Is that her son?
Hmm?
Is that her son?
Yes, that's her son. So this is her son, Harry Byrne. That's who we're being introduced to. It's just how the illustrations are. It's not realistic. These are more abstract illustrations. So it's a different.
There's people who have the cow things. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're one color, and then there's certain spots.
Yeah.
That
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
are.
Okay. All right. Hey, bring it in, guys. We need to continue. Okay. 35 states wanted women to vote, but the country needed 36 to make it law. It all came down to Tennessee, the last state left to vote. If lawmakers in Tennessee said yes, women across the states would finally be allowed to cast their ballots. If Tennessee lawmakers said no, well, things would stay exactly the same. It was a tie. They were going to have to vote again. Okay? Harry Burns was ready to stand firm for what he believed in. He had voted against women's suffrage in the first round. And he knew that most of the people who had elected him hated the idea of women voting. And many of those people were in the audience. They knew they could count on Harry Byrne. After all, the proof was right there on his jacket, a red rose, the symbol of keeping women in the home and out of the voting booths. Yeah, so if you're wearing red, so we said the yellow rose meant yes for the vote, but the red means no. Okay?
Why not?
Someone would break the tie with a no. Okay, so it was up to Harry. Someone did indeed break the tie. Harry Byrne. Yes, he said. So Harry actually ended up saying yes.
Wait, but he's wearing the red. But he has a red rose.
Yeah, we're gonna figure it out.
He changed
So
it.
what? The officials in charge asked the young lawmaker to repeat himself. Obviously, he'd made a mistake. Clearly, he got confused. But there was no mistake. He was not confused. Harry Byrne wanted women to vote. No one could believe it. Many of the women who had organized meetings, marched in parades, carried signs, and made speeches were in the audience wearing their yellow roses. They gasped and cried and hugged each other.
What is that one woman holding?
I don't know. We're going to move on, though, from that. Okay. But why did Harry Byrne change his vote? I know that a mother's advice is always safest for a boy to follow, he explained. And then from his jacket pocket, he pulled out the letter from his mother. The one Feb Byrne had written on her front porch. So that did a lot. That one letter really changed his mind, right? Okay? The people who had elected Harry Byrne were shocked and furious. A grown man listening to his mother? We'll show him, they thought. We will not vote for Harry Byrne the next election. So it was in the headlines too. It says, Harry Byrne. So this is a huge deal. Harry Byrne changed the trajectory of the vote. Okay? So Harry Byrne knew that if he was going to make this choice, he knew that he had a low chance of being elected, which was important to him because this is his life. He's trying to get into the Tennessee House of Representatives. Okay? He told the newspaper reporters, I am happy simply because I followed my conscience. It kept telling me women are people, and voting, he knew, should be the right of all people. He thought again of his mother. So I made the choice, he said, explaining that standing up for what he believed in was more important than winning the next election. It took courage, and courage has a way of making things right. Okay? When the campaigns were over and the votes were counted, the new state representative was announced. Harry Byrne. So Harry actually did end up getting elected.
Oh my god.
He kept his seat in the Tennessee legislature, standing up for equal rights. And no one was prouder than the woman, without speaking a word, who gave all women a voice. So that's a picture of Feb Byrne. That's a real photograph of Feb.
Yeah, not very
Yeah, so she's older because she's a mom. And
Oh my god. No
Wait,
way.
who's that?
this is Feb.
That's the mom.
That's the
mom. I thought that
I know.
you said
This is Feb Byrne. So that's not Harry. That's Feb.
So
Yeah,
then where's
that's
the
Feb Byrne.
Harry?
Okay, so think about like how voting. Hey, you guys need to stop in the front. Oh, you need to keep your hands off each other. Okay, so think about it took a lot of courage, right, for Harry to make that decision. Did you guys think that, or do you think it was easy for him? Well, I would think it's pretty hard to make that decision knowing that there could be negative consequences, right? Okay, so it was through him working with his mom and with that influence of someone telling him, hey, this is the right thing to do and I really hope you do this, Harry decided, hey, you know what, this is the right thing to do. Because lots of people are counting on a vote, okay? So that's kind of what it was like and how the vote, this is a story that not many people know, that's a story of how the vote came to pass, okay? So take a moment to write in your notebooks right now, take a moment to write in your notebooks. What is something that surprised you and what's something that you learned from reading this?
Oh,
Okay?
I learned that
So be writing this in your notebook.
women got the right.
So writing what is something that surprised you and what's something that you learned? Very brief. And then go back to your seats once you have that written down. Okay? And then you get ready to pack up. So what's something that surprised you and what's something that you learned? Okay.
Something that I was surprised of is that I learned.
Yeah, Brett, go back to your seats. You're not ready. So what's something that surprised you and what's something that you learned? So this is like helping you reflect on what we read.
I said never mind. I'll spell it. I said never mind. I'll spell it. I don't know how to do it. Oh my god. I spelled it myself. Meaning you don't have to.